So please don't forget, these are the two type of what audit procedure. There are two type of audit procedure. We have what we call risk assessment, and we also have what we call what further audit procedure, which is divided into what we call what test of control and what substantive what procedure. And these are the two things that we are going to be doing now after we are able to through with what internal control. The two area that we are going to look at next is about what test of control and what substantive procedure. These are the remaining two things that we need to talk about after what? After internal control. So these are the only two things that is left. Then the final thing now is what is about what reports. So after we look about what internal control, the next thing we talk about is what test of control. Then we also talk about substantive what substantive procedure. So let's also talk about documentation. That's what we call what ISA 230. And like we mentioned earlier, that you need to document. We also talk about this in audit evidence as a whole. That evidence in documentary form is more better than evidence in what that you are presented through oral. That is evidence that let's say for example now you send a mail or you send the text, it is more reliable than the one through the word of mouth. So auditor, you also need to maintain what? You also need to maintain a good documentation. You have to have a documentation. And all the documentation is divided into what? Is divided into what? Into three. If you do not call it documentation, we can also call it what? Working paper. So this auditor working paper is divided into two. We have what we call the current, and we also have what we call the permanent. So audit documentation, or sometimes we call it audit file. Audit documentation is record of audit procedure performed, audit evidence obtained, and the conclusion reached. So your documentation will contain of the procedure that you have performed, the evidence that you have generated, and your conclusion. So these are like the content of your documentation now. Audit documentation is a record of the procedure that you have performed, the evidence that you have obtained, and the conclusion that you have reached. Please don't forget that. That is what we call audit documentation. Audit documentation is a record of the audit procedure that you have performed, the evidence that you have obtained, and the conclusion that you have reached. So we also use, instead of saying audit documentation, we can also call it audit working paper. Can also be used as well. Audit file is one or more folder or a storage medium, either physical or in electronic form, containing the record that comprises of audit documentation for the whole assignment. So this my file. It can be in electronic. Like some of the things that I have here now, that this particular document that you are seeing here now, some of these I don't have the original the hard copy. I only have it in the soft copy. So I can transfer this particular document to you whether physically, or I can transfer it via electronic. So those are audit file. Audit file is one or more folder, or a storage media, whether it exists in physical or it exists in electronic form. So now we make mention that the regulatory framework here is ISA 230. So what are the requirements of ISA 230? What are the things that ISA 230 require auditor to do? What are the requirements of ISA 230? ISA 230 require the auditor to prepare documentation on timely basis. It's very, very important. Prepare documentation on timely basis. Documentation that you need to prepare tomorrow, you have to prepare tomorrow. Don't delay it. Sufficient to enable an experienced auditor with no previous connection with the auditor to understand. So that means that your documentation should be able to enable someone that did not even have sufficient to enable an experienced auditor with no previous connection with the auditor to understand. Oh, this particular guy, he have experience, but it is not even part of the it is not even part of the engagement team. So anybody that is not even part of the engagement team should be able to understand what you are doing. So that's the requirement of what ISA 230, that the things that the auditor need to do. You need to prepare documentation on timely basis, sufficient to enable experience auditor with no previous connection with the audit to understand the nature, the timing, and the extent of the audit procedure that you have performed, the result of the procedure and the evidence that you have obtained, sufficient matter arising during the audit, and the conclusion that you have reached. So this particular experienced auditor that does not have that does not have connection with the audit, this is not part of the engagement team before. So you're able to have understanding about the nature and the extent of the audit procedure that you have performed, the result of your procedure, and the evidence that you have generated. Significant matter that arise during the audit, and your conclusion on those matters. So someone that does not have previous connection with the audit should be able to have understanding of this thing. Should be able to have understanding about the nature. Oh, when do you start? What is the essence of the audit procedure that you have performed? What are the results of the procedure and the evidence that you have obtained? And the significant matter that arise during the audit, and what is your conclusion? This particular standard also require auditor to do documentation, discussion of all significant matters, all discussion that occur, and that's why we say that everything that occurred during the audit has to be documented. We don't believe in oral conversation. Send us a mail. How any inconsistent with the final conclusion on significant matter were resolved. That is the significant matter that you identify. How do you resolve it? And justify any departure from the basic principle or relevant procedure justified by an ISA. Justify any departure from the basic principle or relevant procedure specific by an ISA. Because these are comply or explain principle. So if there's any deviation from any ISA, you also need to justify the reason why you do so. Is they comply or explain. Oh, if you do not follow a certain rule, then you have to explain to us. You have to justify the reason why you depart from this basic principle of a certain ISA. So please, this is very, very important. These are the requirement of ISA 230. That is, in terms of auditor is required to prepare documentation on a timely basis. Sufficient to enable can experience auditor with no previous connection with the audit. That is, it is not even part of our engagement team at all. So but it is can experience auditor. You should be able to do you should be able to understand the thing that you have been doing from day one, the nature, the timing, and the essence of the procedure that you have performed, the result of the audit procedure, and your evidence, significant matters, discussion of other matter, the inconsistent that you identify, and how do you address it? If there's any deviation from a certain ISA, you also need to justify that. And please, another very, very important thing as well, which has also been tested before, and that's why I have this, and I have this. There's if you check one day, I think I saw it recently as well. Now, what is the reason why you need to prepare audit documentation? Why do you prepare audit documentation? Why do you need to have working paper? Why? Let's ask ourselves. Why do you need to have Why do you need to have documentation? It is very, very important. And let's ask ourselves as well. Why do you need to have a documentation? Why do you need to, you are attending ICANN class now. Why do you need to have documentation? Why do you need to have notes? So it is a very important thing. Okay, this is it. That's That is November 2015. You can see what audit working paper. Things that is discussed here may not be more than what the reason, the type of audit working paper, or the future. Please don't forget, one of the key three things that you need to know in this aspect is what is the reason for documentation. Why do we need to have documentation? That's one. Don't forget that, please. I'm begging you, as you are listening to me now. The reason why we need to have documentation, type of what audit working paper, and future of the word of the working paper, which we are still going to talk about. So why do we need to now prepare what? Why do we need to have a what in documentation? Why? Preparing a sufficient and what an appropriate documentation on a timely basis help the what? These are the benefits. These are the what? These are the reasons. It enhances the what? The quality of the what? The quality of the audit. It enhances the what? It enhances the quality of the audit. It facilitates what? It facilitates review. That is, if you want to do review now, since the document is what is present, I can do what? I can easily check it out. It enhances the what? It enhances the quality of the what? Of the audit. It facilitates the what? The effective review and evaluation of the what? Of the evidence. In terms of one, once you have a proper what? You have a proper documentation. Once you have a proper documentation, it will facilitate review. So if anybody is coming in, you can easily check my work, you can easily check my work. Assist the audit team to plan and perform the audit. It assists the audit team to plan and perform the audit. Facilitate what? Please don't forget it. Facilitate review. That's another benefit. That's another important of having a documentation. It enhances the word. It enhances the quality of the word. Because every matter of the word, it will be documented. It enhances the quality. It enhances the word. It facilitates review. It assists the audit team to plan and perform the word. Audit. Assist supervisor in directing and what? Supervising work. This is my supervisor. Maybe you are writing a project now. If it is documented, it's going to what? It's going to assist the supervisor as well, so that you're able to enable what? There will be a directing of the work. Ensuring what members of the audit team are accountable for their work, so that if there's a documentation now, you're able to know, oh, this particular work, it is Mr. Jami that do this. It is Mrs. Ngozi that do this particular thing. So it's what? It ensures members of the audit team are accountable, because everything that you do within the audit, you are expected to what? You are expected to what? To document it. So if you document it, okay, that means that you have done what? You have performed a work on that certain area. So once you document, it also what? It also serves as a what? As accountability. Now, if you are checking, oh, how do you do it? You know, there's a documentation for it. So if I check it, okay, if what you do is what is wrong, then you'll be accountable for it. Keeping a record of matter of what continue what significance for the future. In terms of what, if you're able to identify something now, then we can tell the client, maybe you do not have the what, if your internal control system is bad. You understand? Are we able to document that? So if I tell you that, oh, your internal control is bad now, and I've recommended a document recommendation to you. So hoping that by next year now, you should be able to do what? You should be able to have corrected that. So that what? In the future as well. Enable can experience auditor with no previous connection with the audit to conduct a quality control review or inspection. Someone that did not start the engagement with us can do what? Quality control review. We can review the work that we have done. So what is going to make that quality control review to be possible now is by having a good documentation. So please, my people, I'm begging you, please don't forget this. This is a very important one. This is a very important aspect. Reason for preparing what? Reason for preparing audit documentation. What are the benefits? Please, what are the important? This has been tested before, so please don't forget this. Let's now go to what? Let's go to form and content of what? Form and content of working paper. Audit documentation may be recorded on paper. Yeah, I can record it on paper. I'll write it. Or in what? In electronics or other what? Other media. It can be on my laptop. I can have it on my what? On my flash drive. The audit documentation for a specific engagement is assembly in what? In an audit file. The prescribed content of audit file varies depending on the nature and the size of the client and the complexity of the audit process required to reach a conclusion. But every audit documentation is going to contain this. Every audit documentation is going to contain this. Every audit documentation is going to contain this. Irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the size of the client, irrespective of the complexity of the complexity of the audit. But it will include this. So the one that you have on paper, you have the one that you have in electronic form or in other form. So each documentation varies. The documentation varies from the nature of the business to the size of the business to the complexity of the audit process. But every audit documentation is going to have some of these things. The audit program, it will have that. Some of the analysis that you have done, maybe you have performed some analysis on their financial statement. It will also have that. Letter of confirmation and representation. Letter of confirmation, maybe you have do some circularization, which is very, very important. You have do some circularization. It is very important. Some of your inventory counts, checklist. Oh, I have done this. I'll tick it off. Oh, I have this. It is this one as well. I remain. Correspondence as well. So these are things that audit documentation is going to contain, irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the size, irrespective of the complexity of the audit assignment. The program analysis, summary of significant matters, summary important matter, letter of confirmation and representation, checklist, and what corresponds. So now, this is now where we are now. Audit documentation, or we call it audit working paper, can now be divided into what? It can now be divided into two. We can have what we call permanent, and we can also have what we call current. Audit working paper can be divided into what? It can be divided into two. We can have what we call permanent, and we can also have what we call current. And let's now be looking about the content of each of these now. What are the content of permanent file? What are the content of current file? And when we say permanent, things that will be here to be required in every audit. The content of this permanent file, it will be required in It will be required in every audit. If you are doing the audit of 2020 financial statement, it will be required. If you are doing the audit of 2025, it will be required. So, like now? The legal constitution of the company, your certificate of association, your memorandum of association, it will be required in every audit. So things that documents that we are going to be needed in every audit when you are doing 2021 audit, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, things that you are always going to be needed, that it will be needed in every in every annual audit is going to they are going to be it will serve as a content of this permanent working paper. Things that we always need in every audit. Those are the content of the permanent file. Those are the content of the permanent file. Things that we record that we need in every audit. You need the legal constitution of the company. It will be required in 2022 audit. It will be required in 2023 audit as well. Other important legal documents, such as the loan agreement, it will be is the content of what? Permanent working paper. Summary of the history, development, and ownership of the business. When do you establish this company? Your development, your ownership, who owned the company. Summary of your what? Your accounting system and what? And procedure. Summary of the accounting system and procedure is also a word, is also a content of what? Permanent working paper. Please don't forget that. Summary of your word, summary of your accounting system and what? And procedure. Copy of what? Previous year financial statement together with what? With key ratio and what? And trend. Summary of your word of your last year. That is copy of your word, copy of your last year financial statement. Oh, please let me see your word. Let me see your 2021 financial statement. It will also be what? It will also be there in what? The current on the permanent working paper. Trade license, royalty agreement entered by the what? Entered into by the client. Trade license, the royalty agreement, debenture deal, lease, address of the word, address of the register office. No, this is not new to you now. And other word, and other business location of the client. When we say register office, you are talking about your word, your head office. The address, it will be there. All the branches that you have as well. It will also be what? It will serve as the word, as the content of the word, the permanent working paper. Your organization word, your organization chart, organization organogram, it will also be what? It will also be there. Oh, from the word, from the chairman to what? To MD, from MD to finance manager, production manager, research and development manager. So please, these are the what? These are the content of what? Permanent file. Permanent file record, information that is likely to be of what? Significance to every what? To every annual audit of the client. So these are the what? These are the information of the what? The permanent. Please don't forget them. Please, they are very, very important. Let's now talk about the what? Let's now talk about the current now. Current, it is from the word current. It is only what? It is only relevant to this year what? To this year audit. It may not be required in what? In next year audit. Current file contain what? Information relevant to the what? To the current year audit. This is the word evidence in which the word, the conclusion of the current audit will be primarily what? Based. These are what? These are example of the current audit file. The word, the final what? Financial statement and the audit report to be there is the content of what? Summary of what? Audit adjustment, the audit journal, the audit adjustment, it will also be included. Audit planning what? Material, audit planning material. No, the audit planning material that you use for this year, it may be different from what? From next year. Your audit plan that include your word, your timetable, the approach that you are going to use, the number of staff that you are going to use, the materiality what? Threshold that you have determined. If you say, oh, this year materiality is what? Is 10,000 naira. Oh, next year it may be higher than that. It may be lesser than that. So you don't know that, okay, the materiality that I use this year is likely that it's going to change in what? In next year. So your materiality threshold is a word, is a content of your word, of your current working paper. And the risk assessment, audit control material. Audit control material. Those are items used to control the progress of the audit, such as what? The time budget, review point, and point of what? Consideration by the what? By the partner. The what? The audit time budget, review point. No, these are what? These are things that will change. If you what? The plan that you have, the budget that you have, review point. Oh, review point after what? After 3 weeks. We are going to what? We are going to review all what we have been doing. Let's say we start in the what? The first month, the first day of the month. So after what? After 21 days, that's our review point. We are going to check what you have done. Maybe after 2 weeks, we are going to what? We are going to check what we have been doing. So review point also what? Also vary. Your review point of this year may be different from what? From next year. A description of the word, the internal control system in form of what? ICQ, which we are still going to talk about. What? This is what we call what? Internal control what? Questionnaire, flow chart, written description, together with what? Supervision what? Documents. So a description of what? Internal control. It is also a content of the what? It is also a content of the current working paper. Cross-reference of their internal control record and letter of what? Weakness. You know, when we say letter of weakness, it's also called what? Management what? Management letter. I've made mention of that before. It is a letter that is sent by the word by the auditor to the management. If we identify what weakness in your what in your internal control. We are still going to talk about this when we get to what internal control system. A schedule of each item in the what in the balance sheet, like the what the note to the account. A schedule of each item in the what in the statement of profit and loss as well. So please don't forget this. Working paper can be divided into two. Either we call it working paper or we call it audit file, or sometimes we call it what audit documentation. We have what we call permanent and we also have what we call current. So please, my people, don't forget some of the content of these two. Letter of representation, the content. So now, what is now the future of what? Working paper should clearly show the following. That is, a working paper should show the what? Should show the following. So please don't forget this. This has been tested before. Don't forget this. Every working paper must have this word, must have this future. Name of the client, the accounting date, a file reference. File reference, what is the word? The number. The name of the person preparing the working paper. The date the day it was prepared. The name of any person reviewing what? Who reviewed it? Who prepared it? What about the date of the review? A what? A key to what? To audit tick or symbol used in the what? In the paper. A list of what? Any error or omission identified. A conclusion on the what? On the area. So please don't forget it. These are what? Futures of a working paper. These are what we expect a working paper to have, whether it is permanent or it is what? It is current. So when we have what? When we have working paper now, working paper should clearly what? Show this. The name of the, as a word, I'm part of the audit engagement team now. So I will have my own working paper. So the working paper that I'm using now should have the name of the client. Oh, this particular engagement is what? Is for ABC Limited. The accounting year ended is what? 31st of December. A file reference number, maybe 001. The name of the person who prepared, oh, the day that I prepared, oh, 31st of what? Let's say what? 13th of March. The name of who reviewed it, oh, Babatunde. The day that was what? That was reviewed. So your working paper has to contain this. This has been tested before. Don't forget this. Your working paper should show this. Name of the client, the accounting date, the reference number, who prepared, the day that you prepared, who reviewed it, the day you reviewed it, and so on like that. And look at this. So this is like a what now? This is like a working paper now. You can see this. This is like a working paper now. So now you can see this is the name of the word. This is the client. The name of the client has to be there. ABC what? ABC Limited. That's the name of the client. Their accounting date is what? Maybe it's 31st of what? It's 31st of March. Period ended. Reference, the working paper reference. No, it's another thing. It also contains the subject, which you can also have to read. The subject. What is it all about? That means that this working paper is about what? Is about payment. So working paper must have the name of the client, must have the accounting date, a reference number, who prepared it. They should also need to tell us where is it. Prepared by what? DG. Which date? This day that this day I prepared. Who review it? CR review it. Date, which date? 17. So you can see now these are what? Futures of working paper. The name of the client must be there. The subject is about what? What is the accounting year ended? What is the reference number? TP 3.1. Who prepared it? DG. Who review it? TR. Which date you prepared? Which date do we review it? What is the objective of the working paper? What's the objective of preparing this working paper? To ensure that trade payable is what is fairly stated. That's the objective of preparing the working paper. So this is a working paper now. Do you see it? The conclusion that was what? That was reached as well is the features of what? Working paper. Audit tick. That is, which symbol do you use? What these are what? These are audit tick. We have what? This one, it means what? Agree. We have another one, it means what? Cash. Additional what? Check is what is required. If you have this particular symbol, it means what? Agree to payable ledger. That is what? That is fine. So please don't forget that these are what? These are features of what? Working paper. Every working paper must contain the name of the client, who prepares, the subject, the reference, which date do you prepare it, who review it, which date. What is the objective of preparing the working paper? What is the conclusion? What are the symbols, the keys, the audit tick, or what other symbol used in the words used in the paper? So these are, you can say this, and if you see the diagrammatical representation, it's better now. So this is what we talk about. The name of the client, the accounting date, the reference number, who prepared, the day that you prepared, who reviewed, the day that we review, a key audit tick or what? The symbol that used, list of any error or omission, the conclusion that you also what? The conclusion that you also read. So please don't forget this. It's a very, very important as well. Please don't forget. So let's talk about this lastly now, the uses of what? Computer-based audit working paper. In terms of what? You can use computer to what? To prepare your working paper. And that's what we use what nowadays in terms of what? It is not about what? Writing. Every engagement team will come with with a laptop. Understand? So we have a laptop that you use. I can use it to prepare my working paper. One of the features of what? Modern audit is the use of what? Computer package, often used in what? In conjunction with what? The laptop, to make the preparation of what? Audit documentation more efficient for the what? For the auditor. This package can be used to help to prepare what? That is this computer now. Modern auditing what? Modern auditing come with what? Using computer, using software. Analyzing schedule. Lead schedule, we can use what? We can use it to prepare the draft financial statement. Those can usually be what? Automated, cross-reference, and updated as the audit proceed. So like what now, for example, if I change the word, let's say this is a word, this is an Excel sheet now. So if I change anything, if I had 1,000, 2,250, instead of me cancel, I can just say 3. Automatically, this figure that is here is going to what? It's going to change. So we can use it to prepare schedule. We can use it to do analysis. I can say that, divide this particular cell with this. It's going to what? It's going to give me, I can use it to perform ratio. So the financial statement that I have, that I can import in what? In the Excel. Then I'll ask I'll give the Excel a certain instruction. Divide this cell by this. Give me the percentage. So what I just need to do now, after I've gotten the percentage, I need to analyze it. I can use it to prepare a lead schedule, draft financial statement. So what is now the advantage of using computer now to perform what? To perform some of these this thing that we are talking about, maybe to prepare your work, to prepare your working paper, to also do what? To also analyze, lead schedule, draft the financial statement. So using those packages have several advantages, honestly. In terms of the documentation will be neat. The documentation will be what? It will be neat, easy to read, and in a standard format. So like, who prepared this one now? It is what? It is DG. I don't want to know whether DG is what is fine or it is what maybe you have a good handwriting or you do not have a good handwriting. So using computer now to prepare, you can see now it is neat. Whether this particular individual have a good handwriting that is legible or it is not. But using computer to prepare it what make it what it eliminate that. So your working paper, it will be what it will be neat and easily what easily to read and in a standard format. Risks of error in processing adjustment, updates, amendment, correction is what is reduced. In terms of what I don't need to stress myself. What I have here, I have what 5,000 what 845. And you know it is addition of this 1,025 and this item. So if what I don't need to stress myself that does the total what balance. Once I just say what auto sum, it will give me the what to give me the balance. So it eliminates what? It eliminates error. I don't need to be start carrying what calculator. Okay, 1,000 plus 25 plus this. No. You don't do that. So it reduces what? It reduces error in processing. Honestly, it reduces what error. The review process can be carried out what remotely. It can be carried out what remotely. In terms of what, if I want to send it to what to my boss now to what to do review, I just need to what I just need to send this document, send this to his mail. So review can be carried out what remotely. Okay, let me even say, for example, now these are my let's say I have this on my what on my I displayed this now. So my boss can also what it can do this review remotely. It can do it remotely that without even me sending it. Let me show you on a certain app which I have on my on my laptop. We call it what AnyDesk. We have what Team Viewer. So now look at this now. So look at this particular file now. So this particular file now is what we call what AnyDesk. This particular file now enable me to what to connect to your maybe to your system or to your laptop remotely. So without me sending it to your mail, or you can access it. So once I give you my ID now, you can easily check it on my laptop. Oh, Wasil, how do you get this? How do you get that? And if there's any correction that I need to do, then we'll just have the conversation together, then I'll amend it. So maybe before I send it to you, you can ask me to do what? You can ask me, okay, let me see it first. So rather than me snapping it to you, okay, my boss see it, okay, give me your AnyDesk ID or your Teams Viewer ID, then you are going to see it from my laptop. So if there's any area that I need to correct, you can ask, oh, adjust this figure. And once I adjusted it, you can ask, okay, after you adjusted it, send this back to me. So it enable review to be carried out remotely. That's another advantage. Significant time saving may result from automatic processing or of adjustment. It's going to reduce time. In terms of instead of me stressing myself, you understand, maybe I'm trying to make a certain amendment now. So once I like the 1,000 that I have now, once I adjusted this, let's say for example now I remove this 400 that is here now, it will automatically or let me say I remove this 1,320, it will automatically adjusted it himself. So it enable amendment to be done within a short period of time. So and it saves time because it is automatically processing. It is not manual. So what is now let's now talk about the last thing now, which is ownership, custody, and confidentiality of working paper. Ownership, it is the working paper is the property of the it is the property of the auditor. It is the property of the auditor. And the auditor must ensure confidentiality of it. That okay, this particular working paper that you have as a result of the work that you have done for this particular client, make sure that there's a confidentiality of it, whether you have it physical or it is in electronic form. Ownership of the audit documentation rests with it rests with the auditor. It rests with the what? It rests with the auditor. Working paper do not what? Do not form part of the what? The accounting record of the client and do not belong to the what? Do not belong to the client. So working paper is the word is a property of the word of the auditor. It does not belong to the word. It does not belong to the client at all. It does not belong to the client. It belongs to the auditor. It's a property of the auditor. Auditor need to decide how long to keep the word the audit file. ISA 230 require the word a minimum of what of 5 years. That is the custody. It requires a minimum of what of 5 years. So that means that if I perform this engagement in what in 2020 now, I need to make sure that before I can do what this working paper, I have to retain it for a minimum of what 5 years. Auditing standard require the auditor to ensure that what the working paper are kept safe and in what and their content are kept what confidential. Information should only be what be made available to third party in accordance with what with ethical guidelines. So make sure that the information that is here, it is what it is safe. So please don't forget ownership is what is the property of the auditor. Custodian has to do with what minimum of what minimum of 5 years. Then what confidentiality you have to ensure that as Mr. Auditor that okay, this particular working paper relating to this engagement cannot be accessed by what by third parties. It is very, very important. So please don't forget this. Let me make a brief recap of some of the things that we talk about. We talk about working paper. It is one of the most important things here is that working paper can also be called what documentation. And what is the reason why you need to document? Why do you need to have what documentation? So please, this is very, very well. This is very, very important. And I think I take my time to explain this very, very well. So please, what is the reason? What is the benefit of having documentation? Working paper can be what? Each document, working paper varies from engagement to engagement, from the size of the business, from the nature of the business. But what each working paper is going to have the what some of the audit program that you do, some of the analysis that you do during the audit, the summary of significant matter that occur, letter of representation or confirmation, checklist correspondent. So working paper can now be divided into two. We have what we call the permanent, and we also have what we call the current. So please don't forget some of the content of the two. Then we talk about working papers. You have with this following characteristics: the name of the client, the accounting date, file reference, the name of who prepared, the date that was prepared, who reviewed it, the date that was reviewed, key audit tick or other symbol that was used, list of any error or omission that was identified, and your word and your conclusion. The subject as well. You can see this is a sample of the working paper now. The client is what ABC Limited. The subject is what trade payable. The period is what 31st of March 20x4. Who prepared it? DG. Who reviewed it? TR. Which date that was prepared? Which date it was reviewed? The reference number. What's the objective of preparing the working paper? The work that you perform. The result of your work, and your word and your conclusion as well. The symbol that you use. Then we also talk about computer word-based audit working paper. So please don't forget this advantage. Documentation will be what it will be neat if you use computer to prepare your working paper. Risks of error in processing what adjustment is what is reduced. Review process can be carried out remotely without being necessary for the review to take place at the client premises. In terms of you can send it to your boss. The boss can also access it from your laptop as well. Significant time saving may result from automatically processing of the adjustment. Ownership, custodian, and the confidentiality is the property of the auditor. The minimum is 5 years based on requirement of ISA 230. And the auditor need to ensure confidentiality of this. So please don't forget this. Don't forget this. It's very, very well. It is very, very important. This. It's very, very well. It is very, very important.